Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so T-Bone Burnett, first of all, I didn't know a whole lot about him before this. He's my new spirit animal. I like that guy. He's amazing. Um, uh, One of the things when listening to him made me think about. So I'm jaded when looking at pop culture and what makes a hit. And actually, Ron Fair and Sylvia Massey kind of talk about it as well. Um, that in our recent memory, I look at a hit as a manufactured product. For example, if you hear Justin Bieber, you hear of Justin Bieber making deals with recording studios in order to make his hit like the number one on the charts, or you hearken back to the days that the recording studios were so intertwined with radio stations that really you're only getting on the radio if you were part of one of those studios because they kind of controlled the distribution pipeline that way. Um, but I've recently been getting into yacht rock. I don't know if you're familiar with the genre, but it's like
Yeah.
70s and 80s rock. It's kind of like the new classic rock, I guess, because they couldn't do like newer classic rock. So I guess they're calling it yacht rock. So you got like Kenny Loggins and
Oh,
uh, you have, Hall and Oates and these kind of guys. But so I've listened to like a huge, like a huge mix of them and just probably over 200 different artists with or songs slash artists during that period. But sure enough, the biggest hits from that, the ones that I'm finding to be like the best songs of that era, are connected to the ones that got like the most airway time or they were connected to a movie soundtrack. Those are really the ones that resonate strong enough in the end. Therefore, I wonder, is it the artist? Is it the team that were coaching them to greatness? What do you think the impact of that is? Um, or do you think that doesn't exist in general?
um, well, if I mean, as far as like what makes a hit record, nobody can tell you that. Like, if everybody knew that, then everybody would do it. And so, a lot of times, like the things I've worked on that have been a big success, have like that song Lady Marmalade. That was like a feature song in that movie. And so and so it was a big budget 20th Century Fox release, and this song helped promote the movie, and so they were willing to spend a lot of money to make that song become a hit. And so when we were doing that, like we just pulled out all the stops and like as much studio time and as many big artists and like everything. Like that song cost a lot of money, but it was a number one worldwide smash. So, um, so all these, but still the song had to be great and it had to help promote the movie to make it a success. Um, that song I worked on with Vanessa Carlton that got nominated for Record of the Year called "A Thousand Miles." You know, the the video for that song was part of a film, and so I think the video production company paid for the video. I mean, the film production company paid for the video. So, there's a lot of you know big corporate entities behind that help make it such a big hit. But it was a big hit because she performed great and it was a really catchy song.
Yeah.
But it had a lot of like momentum behind it. And I worked on other records that are some of my favorites that nobody ever heard. Like there's this guy, he's been the lead singer for Dishwalla named J.R. Richards that I did with Sylvia Massey. And that's one of my all-time favorite records. His record is called
I'm a big fan of Dishwalla, actually.
his record is called A Beautiful End.
Uh-huh.
And I love I love that record. And when I was doing it, I thought, man, this is going to be so big.
Yeah.
But people but I mean, JR is an independent artist, and it just didn't really catch on to anything.
Right.
And I don't know how well it sold, but I never heard anything about it after we did it. And we did it at Sylvia Massey's studio, and she co-produced it, and it's really beautiful music, but it didn't really go anywhere. And so who knows? And sometimes you just can't, those things are out of my control, but it's also fun to, like I produced a pop song called Three Strikes a few years ago. And it was a brand new song by a writer from Austria. And we found the singer and made a video, and it was a pretty significant production. And we, and so I hired a radio promoter, and he got it so a brand new artist, brand new song, brand new record company, we got it into the top 40 in the Billboard emerging artist charts. That's kind of like just for radio. And, but we didn't follow it up with anything. So, I mean, it got pretty far, but all on its own. There was no like big entity behind it. And it didn't really go. It didn't get very far, but not because it's not a cool song. I mean,
right.
Because there wasn't enough other things behind it to propel it. Right.
You need sort of this whole marketing apparatus, unless it's a complete one in a million. That's interesting though. It's very humbling that yes, you can produce a hit if you throw enough at it, perhaps. It's like designing a party or something. If you really throw all the stops and get all the right people there and everything, it's going to be a thing. But there's still plus or minus this sort of randomness factor, which I think is cool. And that sometimes those might be the most interesting ones where there was nothing behind it or no money, but just organically created this beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and there are examples of artists who have, I forget which one it was, but they just did shows and they gave away their CDs. And then this is maybe 10 years ago, and their fans started up a web page, all without the artist even knowing about it.
Wow!
And that got them a bunch of fame and a bunch of sales, and that propelled them, and they got a record contract, and they're a pretty successful band, or at least they were for a while. And so sometimes those kind of organic things do happen, especially in this day and age where it's not really hard to put up a website and make your songs available online. Like, it's not that complicated. So like if I want to like do my own song and put it on iTunes, I can. It's like I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, like the trick is to get people to go to that website.
Yeah.
Or to like order to find your song on iTunes, and so there's still a trick to it, but it's much simpler, and like it's much easier for artists to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think it's much more possible today, like Billie Eilish, I guess, that we were referring to before, who just does it from her bedroom, right? I was just surprised. Like I went back through all these songs. I don't know if it's just because I have a personal connection to the hits because I heard them while I was sitting in, my children's seat in the back seat or something. I don't know, but it's just when I hear the hits, it's just like there's something that resonates. But then I hear the other ones, I'm like, that's a good song, but it seems whenever I'm like, that song's just amazing, that song was also like a top 40 hit and all these.
So you're seeing a correlation between how famous it was and how good of a song it was,
which totally disproves kind of what I'd like to think as a conspiracy theorist, saying that we're just being fed stuff. But speaking of people who go to that angle, T-Boone, right? I wrote some of the stuff in this interview that he had on NPR. So first of all, he has a new spoken word album out, which is super cool, called Invisible Light Acoustic Space. I don't know if you've checked that out, which is kind of it's in the vein of like Brian Eno.
That's great.
Ambient acoustic music. It's really cool. And then the song they were talking about is A Man Without a Country. And so this is what he says about the song. He says, the human race has undergone over a century of electronic programming, And along with that has come a whole range of ramifications. Some of them, all of the neurological and psychological disorders that we have been experiencing. So he's saying that this is leading to some of the psychological and neurological disorders that we're experiencing. And also our attention spans have been demolished. So he said, and I was finding myself being online, starting to read an article and reading the headline and seeing an ad and then finding stuff. And then 2 hours later, I forgot what I was doing in the first place after being down the well after a couple hours or a couple minutes. But he said, so for his song, we started with this to stretch our attention and let ourselves a chance to just relax with pure sound where there's no stimulation. So that's kind of just the pure ambient sound, which kind of like wind as part of the song. And he said, because so much of pop music these days, there's another hook every 3 seconds, and there's someone else to take your attention. And he said that's pandering to an audience that is being brutalized to electronic music media, which, first of all, that whole statement is amazing. NPR changes the topic very quickly, actually, after that. But he says, but he said radio was an important first step to the ability to program large groups of people. And he said, really, my whole adult life, I've been studying behavioral modification and condition response, and that his album is a anti-behavioral modification device that he's pointing out in the song. So
that's amazing.
That's amazing. And I've been around people like you, Michael, and Josh, and some of our other friends like Jerome, who work in sound. And I've noticed that when I'm around you guys, you guys have this attuneness to sound that another person doesn't, right? And even like a recollection of those sounds during that period of time. And I'm wondering for you guys, like, how does sound from outside music impact you and engage with you in life? Are there moments that you can kind of reflect on where sound has impacted you or engages with you while you're just kind of going around in your existence?
One thing I pay a lot of attention to is the sound of somebody's voice. Like if their voice is like really harsh and really loud, like kind of like, okay, just a second, like, or like I'm talking to them off on the phone, and if I have to hold the phone back like this, like it's hard to listen to them. And so people like you guys have kind of normal, kind of calm voices, and it's easier to talk and be engaging with them. And so, whereas I'm sure I notice it more than most people do is if people have like a really agitating tone in their voice, it's a little bit more difficult for me to like have a long conversation. But most people don't. But it's just something that I'm aware of. And my hearing is so acute that like I can listen around the room and it's pretty quiet, but I hear like every little distinct noise. I hear the fan, I hear my fan, I hear the neighbor's dog, and I hear the washing machine going. And so I notice every detail all the time. So like if I'm in the recording studio and people are chatting in the back, I'm like, okay, you guys can't do that, because it distracts me. So yeah.
I was wondering Josh's answer to that too, actually, as well.
Oh, I have. It's funny. I have a lot of trouble with the open floor plans. They're very popular now, and a lot of times they have pergo floors, which are even worse than hardwood floors. And the sound of nails, like dogs' nails and stuff, those houses are very high pass filtered to me, and it drives me crazy. I can't be in that environment. So I like a carpeted room with a lot of angles, like a sound hall. But it's interesting. So going back to the behavioral modification, I mean, there's so much to go over there, but I always think back to that John Cage quote of, I think it was he went to India or something and asked them what the purpose of music was, what they perceived the purpose of music as being. And they said it was to quiet the mind for divine intervention or inspiration. And that actually has been the most, I don't know, I always find that when I'm listening to live music,
Mhm.
because it forces you to be there for a long time. Say you're sitting at a jazz concert or something, you know, you have to be there for an hour, and then maybe half an hour in, I start getting so many ideas. It's just like my mind is firing nonstop, and that's what I've been missing in quarantine and the lack of live music, because you're forced to do it. You know, you're forced to sit there for an hour and listen to music, which you're not going to do by yourself very often. I don't know, Michael, if you do that very often at home, just sit and listen to music for an hour, but I'm not good at it. I get too
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not typically. Like I've got like an amazing stereo, and I have a great turntable, and I have a lot of records that I like classic ones and ones I've done. But for me to sit there for even 20 minutes and listen to a side of music and not do anything else, it's not. I don't do it that often.
yeah.
And so, you know, I listen to music on my iPad, sitting here while I'm working on the computer.
Mhm.